When I was a kid, my brother used to be on a local swim team. And because of that, I would always get dragged to these hours-long swim meets with absolutely nothing to do except, play my Game Boy. In fact, this was probably the very Game Boy that I would have played, this purple Game Boy Color right here. For a long time, there's all of these games that have always existed in my memory as, quote-unquote pool games. Games that I would bring to the swimming pool when I was bored out of my mind during these swim meets. One of those games is this guy right here, the Pokemon trading card game, Game Boy Color game. Now, if you've never seen this game before, it is a surprisingly faithful and very, very cool adaptation of the original Pokemon trading card game with the original sets of cards of the original Pokemon that were out way back in the very late 90s when this came out. They actually made a sequel to it but that's Japan only, but I think there's a fan translation. You can play the sequel. But anyway, the reason I bring this up is because I have these distinct memories of certain video game songs in my life and where I was when I first heard them. And one of those songs is a song in this game that it's sometimes called the Club Master Duel song or the Club Leader Duel song. And you'll see it labeled as many different things when you look at YouTube uploads and stuff. But I distinctly remember being at one of these swim meets and getting to the first boss of this game, or the first Club Master. His name is Gene. He's the master of the rock gym. And hearing this song come on and just not even playing the game, just literally taking this thing with its tiny speaker, putting it up to my ear, and just listening to this song for minutes at a time. So this song lingers a lot in my mind, has lingered in my mind for a very long time. So I want to talk about it a little bit because I also think it's a phenomenal composition. So this game's soundtrack was composed by Ichiro Shimakura, who doesn't have a ton of sole composer credits to his name. I think he was probably more often in the role of sound director or sound programmer or something like that. But there are a handful of games that he composed for. He's probably most well known for this soundtrack as well as some of the early Mario Party soundtracks. I know that he's listed as composer for Mario Party 2 and 3. And I think that's a shame because I wish that he had done more full game scores because the guy's really a master composer, which I will hopefully demonstrate a little bit while I talk about this song. So the main thing I want to talk about with this song is its structure. It has what you would probably call an A-B structure, where you have an A section, a B section, and it just loops indefinitely between those two sections. There's a little bit of a transitionary section between each of them, but fundamentally it's an A-B structure. And I really like this structure for video game music, especially old school video game music where there were a lot of limitations on how long songs could be. I think it's really powerful if you have an A section that has one kind of emotional state and a B section that has a different emotional state, and then you constantly vacillate between the two of them, which creates just a lot of interest and it never gets tiring to listen to. But especially for a song like this, the reason I want to bring this up is because the way that this song differentiates its A section and its B section I think is really interesting, and it's a really powerful tool for composers. So I'll talk a little bit about what that is when we get into it. So, all right, let's take a listen. Listen to it. And I could just listen to that all day. So this song is in 12/8, which is basically 4/4, but instead of breaking up the beats into eighth notes, you're breaking them up into triplets. So you don't have, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4, and you have right? And that creates this kind of rollicking feel, it has this energy to it, this motion that I think is really, really cool. So musically, this is very simple. It's just these kind of D octaves. But what makes it sound so cool is that you have every single one of the 3 Game Boy channels contributing to the sound with different waveforms, which creates this super full and thick sound that I always really liked translating to the guitar. If you put the guitar in drop D, so you have, the lowest note is a D, so you can do. I actually did a cover of this song way back when I was in high school that is on this YouTube channel. You can still listen to it. It's a little clunky. There's some parts of the melody that I wasn't able to play perfectly, but I always thought it sounded just super cool to play with an acoustic guitar and make it sound almost like a Western duel or something like that. That's just so cool. So that's the whole A section. And the thing that I think is really interesting about it is it's very harmonically ambiguous, right? You're ostensibly in the key of D, but you don't know if you're in D minor or D major, because at no point during this whole A section do you ever hear the third of the D chord. So you hear this, and you have this melody, it's like, none of those notes are the third, so you have no idea if that's a D major chord or a D minor chord. Now, the melody is hovering around notes that are a little bit more similar to a D minor scale than a D major scale. Like, that's C right there, or whatever. But fundamentally, you don't really know what key you're in, and that ambiguity creates this very interesting emotional feel. It's very tentative and cool and collected and internal. There's not any really strong emotion coming forward here. Because the emotion of the chord is really the third, right? And since you don't know, you're in this kind of like limbo state. Translating it to the Pokemon trading card game, I always thought of this A section as being sort of like, when you're looking at your hand, right? And you're shuffling through the cards, and you're trying to think, what move should I make? What card should I play? You might be looking up at the opponent and, eyeballing him, seeing what he's thinking, right? It's very internal. You're thinking about a play to make. You're trying to like figure out your strategy. There's also not a lot of harmonic movement in this A section. You might be vacillating between like a D power chord and a C power chord, because you have that middle part that's going like, right? So you have this in there, even though the bass is still, plugging away at this. So really, it's kind of like. But that's about all the harmonic movement you're getting. It's just going from this D to C. And again, that contributes to this sort of ambiguous emotional feel. You're not going to a lot of different chords. You're not going on a very long journey into different places. You're staying very much around this center of gravity of this D power chord, basically. So if that's the A section, well, what do you do with the B section? So let's keep listening. We're in the transition right now. All right, so this B section is so sick. When you're writing a song and you're trying to come up with a B section or another section to the piece, what you might initially think to do is change the starting chord to a different chord. So if you're in like, the key of D and you have a song that's like going like this in the A section or something, starting on this D chord. In the B section, you might start in a G chord and you go to the 4 chord. Right? But that's not what this song does. What this song does is actually way more clever and I think very interesting, which is starting on fundamentally the same chord as the A section, just with more information. So the first chord of this B section is a D major chord, right? So now, instead of this D5 power chord where we don't know what the third is, the B section is starting on the D major, with the third very, very accented in both the backing arpeggio and in the melody. I got this, right? There's the third right there. So after this A section where we never hear the third of the chord at all, now we have this B section where the third is very prominently displayed. And instantly it sounds completely different, despite the fact that it's still a D chord. And so we're still playing the chord from the home key, right? So I've always thought this was a super clever strategy for differentiating your A sections and your B sections, where like your A section, you just hide the third. You don't play the third of the tonal center. And then when you go to the B section, put that third in there, make it sound super emotional and cathartic. After all that ambiguity, you're hearing the third, and it sounds so beautiful. It's like, this is super powerful, which actually contrasts really nicely with that other part of the first melody where you got that. So you got that same rhythm, except now it's going up. It's like, oh man, that's so powerful. It's so cool. the other thing is that this B section has a lot more chords. So instead of doing this very simple, like, we're getting more of the chords from the key of D major. So you got this E minor chord. It's so beautiful. You know, that's just so cool. It's simple. It's just a 2-5-1, right? Now we got a little bit of mode mixture, so we're gonna get the this B flat chord from the D minor. It's just sick. I don't know what to tell you. I love this ending lick too. This super cool, basic blues pentatonic type thing. It's just so awesome. It just gets you like so hype. Goes back to the top of the song, and then, you know, there you are. So to me, like, the contrast between these two sections has always been something like, you know, if that first section is you're looking through your cards, you're trying to figure out what play to make, right? You're looking at your opponent, you're like, I don't know what his strategy is. You know, you're sizing him up. And finally, that next section is that cathartic moment when you pick a card, you make a play, and it's a super hype play. You know, you're kicking ass, you're dominating. You know. It's that emotional release that just feels so epic and powerful. Oftentimes when you're playing the game, like the peaks and valleys of the song are going to sometimes sync up with what you're doing. There's going to be times when you're like, you're getting the edge, you're starting to win, and that B section kicks in, and you're just going to feel like on top of the world, like you're a master. I mean, this to me is a perfect video game song, and that goes for a lot of the music in these Pokemon trading card game video games. There's some really remarkable stuff in there. I encourage you to listen to the rest of the soundtrack, because it really is phenomenal. So this strategy of contrasting sections is something I actually use a little bit in my own compositions. For example, in the video game I'm developing, which I hope you'll forgive me if I take a second to plug it here. I'm making a game called Detective Instinct: Farewell My Beloved. It's a adventure game very heavily inspired by games like Famicom Detective Club or the Ace Attorney series, and also DS games like Hotel Dusk. I wrote the story and also composed the music for the game, so if you're interested, we would really appreciate if you add it to your Steam wishlist. It's also coming to Nintendo Switch and should be released later this year. Thank you. I'll put a link in the description. Don't worry. I got you. There's a lot more I could say about this song, but I'll probably wrap it up for now. So thank you so much for watching this video. You know, let me know what your favorite song from the Pokemon trading card game soundtrack is, and if you like this sort of thing, be sure to subscribe to the channel. You know, I haven't made a YouTube video in a very long time, but I'm trying to get back into it, and this format's really fun. You know, just kind of casually talking about the songs that I really love, and you know, hopefully learning something along the way. So yeah, until next time, peace. I just picked these cards at random from a stack of old cards. This is, like, Blaine's Doduo. Sure, this one's worth a whole lot of money.